Hello, and welcome to episode 84 of the Critical Fools podcast. Today, we'll be discussing and reviewing a romantic comedy classic, When Harry Met Sally, debuted in 1989. It stars Billy Crystal, Meg Ryan, and directed by Rob Reiner, who is famous for, he's actually famous for a lot. He's famous for All in the Family, Sleepless in Seattle, The Wolf of Wall Street. I think he was an actor in it, not a director. But he's been he's actually an actor director prototype. He actually does behind the camera work and on the camera.
On camera.
Yeah, and so I mean that's pretty much the backstory of this is basically just to give everybody some context because I think we'll probably talk about individual scenes and topics. Is these are two, I would say at the time they first meet are kind of like acquaintances. They just happen to both need to do a road trip and figure they could share the load on the drive to New York. They think that they're never seeing each other again. And then actually on this topic, I have something on this too, because this happened to me a couple weeks ago. That there's people that I hadn't seen in 3 years in New York, then I run into them and I'm like, ugh. Anyway, some of them like happy, some of them like, I never wanted to see you again. How is it in a city of 9 million people I see you? But we'll get to that some other time. But basically, they have the same experience I did, which is they think they're never seeing each other again, and they run across each other multiple times in their lives because they're both living in New York, and how their lives change and circumstances happen. They end up spoiler alert, they end up I guess falling for each other. But how it gets there is interesting, and we'll probably discuss that. But basically, that's kind of like the premise. And one of the main questions it asks the audience is can men and women be friends? The ending of the film might leave you with a message of what they think, at least of the writer and directors, or maybe our society. But it's an interesting question that I think we'll probably talk about in this episode. But yeah, so what were your high level thoughts? Because it's probably the second, I guess, rom-com we've done. Different style, different time period.
Yeah, it is.
So, I mean, what did you think of like even the style of like inserting those clips with other couples that they interviewed and stuff? I thought that was pretty neat, actually, when I first watched it.
Yeah, it reminded me, because I just recently watched this, but it reminded me a lot of Band of Brothers. When they, at the beginning of the episodes, they kind of have those clips of like war veterans and their experiences before actually cutting to the dramatized version of real events that happened in that show. It's kind of the same thing with this, where it's like it gives you the slice in perspective of like real people. Apparently those weren't the actual people of their stories. They were actually actors. But they gathered those stories from real people, apparently. I thought it was a good touch and obviously I think that what they were saying is a lot of people basically meet in very interesting ways, like some early on, some it's like later on, and it was like a wide range. I remember at one point one was like, oh yeah, we were married and then divorced, and then like guy like had like 3 or 4 wives. Then he's like, yeah, and then I was at a funeral with some girl, what was her name, like Roberta, and then my first wife was there, and like I ditched Roberta, we went to go get coffee, remarried again. I was dying. I was like, that's not the most romantic story I've ever heard. But I think that was the point. It's like you kind of like never know how things or relationships are going to pan out in that way. They had all kinds of unique stories. I thought it was a good touch overall. I thought it was a pretty good movie. I see kind of why it got quite a bit of hype. I mean, the actors like Meg Ryan and Billy Crystal were very good in this film.
Yeah, I think it's resonant in American culture because it's obviously in that period of the late 80s, 90s. So it's like there's a bit of the nostalgic lens, especially with the payphone scenes. Not the payphone, the house phone, cord phone scenes.
Well, no, what I was dying was the Rolodexes they kept going through.
Yeah, the Rolodex stuff. You need my card? I was like, okay.
I know, and then like when one of her like single friends, who I think is the one who gets married, she's like going through it at one point, and she's like, "How about like Billy or whoever?" And he's like, "Dude, he's been married for a year," and then she folds it kind of like in a corner to like know that he's married.
I know, something that doesn't happen anymore, right? Yeah. No, it's that was a funny scene, and that's what's her name? She was Princess Leia, right? Carrie Fisher.
Yeah,
she passed away, but yeah, no, that was fun. So, anyways, let's go to the beginning, right? So the beginning's interesting because they're on the road trip. And then they have that first scene in that restaurant where, I mean, I'm curious about your interpretation. You think he was testing waters? Do you think he was just messing with her head?
Probably a bit of both was my guess.
And then she evolves actually. That was interesting is that both characters evolve.
I mean, they both do. I mean, the dude is like your typical like kind of nihilistic know-it-all at the beginning, and you think, oh, like he's just one of these kind of like, you know, like kind of young dudes who just think they know it all. And then you see like 5 years later, it's like, oh, dang, that dude changed quite a bit in his perspective. And then eventually he gets married, and you can tell that Sally's character, like Sally's just shocked because she's like, I remember you from the one trip. You're like totally different, like over time. It's funny because I think that's why first impressions matter, because it's like hard once you like know someone to get that impression out of your head like later on.
It took them time,
Yeah.
but yeah. So that was yeah, and that's where like we get the opening kind of like theme and question is like, can a woman be friends?
Yep.
And he says no, right? Because in the end, a guy will always want to, if he finds her attractive, he'll always want to.
She's like, I don't always sleep with them. He's like, yeah, but they all want to sleep with you. I was laughing so hard.
Yeah, it's kind of true.
Guy logic.
It is. It actually reminds me of that one. I think I told you the story, so I'll just get the names just in case. But like, I went to somebody's birthday party years ago when I was still like hanging out with this group of people. Really nice girl. I mean, pretty attractive. Even I would admit that. But like, I think there was like a chip that happens when you mature where it's like, even though you're attractive, you kind of know like, is this realistic or not? Or like, are we really like in the same kind of like wavelength where like this would work? Like, not just like in terms of attractiveness and stuff, but also like social circles and, socioeconomic status, unfortunately. Even though
culture,
I know
all that.
Yeah, I know that a lot of our media says love conquers all, but my time has proven that that happens sometimes, often doesn't. So, but anyways, this dude got way too drunk, and I never met this guy. So like, this tells you like, when people are too drunk, some people don't have any self-control. And the guy is just saying like, yeah, like I want to bang her, and I'm like, okay. Like at first I was like taking it back.
The drunk unfilteredness. Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, like why are you telling me this? Like, I'm not gonna say anything. Like, I'm not trying to get caught here with anything, dude. And
no, I think he was just drunk and like wasn't thinking, just said out loud, and he barely knew.
Yeah. And then one of her other closer friends was like, a childhood friend, was like, he was messing with him so hard. He's just like, nah, I'm actually sleeping on her couch, so the only dude staying at her place is me, dude. The guy was kind of triggered, dude. But he kept like, I thought he let it go, the other guy, but he kept bringing it up, and I think that's why this other guy was like, just.
Dude, that's weird. That's kind of weirdo behavior if you keep going.
Yeah, so he was trying to like squash it. He kept going harder on the jokes, and I was just like, whatever. What was very interesting was I would learn later, because I wasn't in this world at all. But her childhood friend, like they grew up in the same area, but to give you some context, like I think you might click in your brain once I give you the context. But basically, and the side tangent or the side story here is that they grew up together, but she's obviously from like what I would consider like affluent, not just like money, but like culturally in terms of like the Jersey scene. And it's like, she did the typical, grew up on the shore house, had a lot of stuff to do, while like, better or worse, the dude was like the stereotypical Jersey Shore show archetype.
I remember the story now.
Yeah, and what he told me, and she confirmed because she talked to me on the side about it once, because she was surprised how much I was like just talking to him and kicking with him. I was just like, well, he was the only one that like just seemed real. I mean, he knew, maybe he was too self-aware, because I think he also wanted to get with his childhood friend, but I think he, was self-aware to realize that
they come from two different worlds.
Yeah, and it would be a lot of effort, and maybe it wouldn't work because he didn't blame her. He said because of his own insecurities. I didn't tell her that, but I was just like, man, this guy, like, I think he's got a decent head on his shoulders, even though nobody's perfect. But she found that like strange because I I don't know. I don't really know anything about this gym tan lotion culture. Anyways, yeah. And I didn't even watch this. Yeah. And like, yeah, and then he, I could tell that like her other newer college and New York friends, they look down on this guy because they see themselves as yuppies, and this guy's a Guido, right?
Mhm.
And it just speaks to like even in like subcultures in America, some of the same themes that we talked about in other films with class and culture divides exist even here. And you would, if you were, let's say, an outsider from like whatever Africa or Asia, you would be probably perplexed a little bit just because there's assumptions made about American culture that like, oh, if you're all white, then you all get along. And it's just really the issues with like the racial stuff. But it's like even within subgroups, there's conflicts, right? Yeah. Anyways, I just wanted to bring it back to the whole point of like, I just like how Billy Crystal's character, Harry, has that opinion. And honestly, I couldn't disagree with it most of the time, even though it's more nuanced, and maybe we'll get into that. Because I don't know about how you perceive it, but like I just think that it's true. Maybe you have a bunch of examples that will counter mine, but I just feel like if a guy is like sort of attracted to some girl, like it's more about his discipline, because deep down, if the opportunity was there, like remember that pranks? I think there was a YouTube prank where the guy like tells the girl like, tell your guy friend like you want to get with him, or like you want.
Yeah.
I think Adam Preach did this, yeah, and then and then they were like, she was like, they're not gonna jump for that, and then they all do. Very very few don't. And I think
there's like one or two that don't, and I think that's your point. It's like on average, most dudes are like that. If you find someone somewhat attractive and cool, you're gonna try to go for it at least. But obviously there's going to be some dudes who weren't. They're a little more principled, I guess would be the word I would use. But overall, I tend to agree. I mean, there's always exceptions, right, to every situation, but I don't necessarily disagree with Harry's perspective.
I'm curious to ask, like, so how like Sally's is shocked by that. And I've noticed like girls are shocked by it. Why do you think that is? Why do you think girls are shocked by that?
Well, because they don't think like dudes.
Yeah, because it's always like they're always like shocked by that. I'm just like, that's how it actually is for dudes. Like, like.
But I mean, that's kind of how it is. It's like, dude, I've seen many situations of like people, like dudes tend to physically cheat, and I feel like or situations I've known, women like to emotionally cheat.
Yeah, well, they definitely are experts at that, but it's not cheating. Don't worry.
It is.
That's not what I get told. Anyways,
who tells you that?
I mean, a lot of people tell me that in New York. It's just like they're just having a guy friend conversation. I was like, okay.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Anyway, so actually, more a lighthearted topic. Besides the sex gets in the way line. That's a good line by Harry. When they drive it, so one thing, when they drive into the city, unless you're telling me they drove in at like 5:30 in the morning, there is no way there's no traffic.
This is also like 30 years ago.
Still, there's no way there's no traffic.
32 years ago.
So I was.
Oh yeah, like, you must have hated that Washington Square Park scene. There's like 3 cars on the road there.
I'm waiting to see 3 cars on the road there.
That was Washington Square Park, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I was just like, I'm waiting to see 3 cars there ever. It's not even like that when it's snowing. They're just parked. They definitely cleared it out. They always do that though. That's something that like I think a lot of people don't realize. They actually filmed on where I work, the street, and they cleared out everything. I was like, okay, it's nice to see it so empty. I've never seen it so empty before. Have
you seen that when they film around New York, like empty areas?
Yeah, that's what they do. They film a lot of Law and Order in Queens, and they happen to film my block for some reason. So whatever in the new episode of Law and Order, I don't watch that show anymore. Where I work will show up in the backdrop. So I thought that was interesting. But anyways, there's 3 time skips, right? There's the college meetup scenes. I would think that's the shortest one. I think all the longer scenes are probably towards the end when they're both kind of like single. But anyways, let's flip to Sally. So Sally, her evolution. So you kind of touched upon Harry's evolution of guy know-it-all, becomes romantic, falls in love and then gets divorced and then has to kind of rediscover that like balance between love and cynicism. While Sally was like very sheltered, very like set on her opinions, and then thought like she wanted I just wanted I don't want kids. I want to just have this high career, high basically disposable income life, and then it falls apart with her ex that he didn't want. The same with her, and then he actually got remarried with a kid pretty quickly.
What did they say? Like it was like a couple months before they got married.
And then she's left.
She's like, "Is it me? It is me."
Yeah, left reconstructing her life, and then finding and we'll talk about maybe how the last leg on the Harry Sally thing. But what did you think of her character from like the onset, like that first phase to maybe that second phase? Because I think she, in some ways, she didn't change that much when they reunited at the airport. Like,
no, I would say Harry changed a lot more.
Yeah, he went through the evolutions. But what did you think of her little friend group too? That's another thing too that I get asked, so I have to bring it up. All right, it's a cliche, but I usually used to see this only on YouTube. But then so I was hanging out with my coworkers, and one of the girls who's coincidentally, she's a social media influencer too on the side. But we'll talk about that some other day. But one thing she brought up is that she's like, because she was asking me you run you think run clubs are a great way to meet guys? And I say, well, it depends on the run club and what your goal is.
Yeah, they all have different vibes.
Yeah, and also the run club I'm in, it's social, but people are they compete at a lot of the races, and a lot of them do the marathon. So it's not that easy to just run.
It's more focused. It's more focused.
Yeah, a lot of the social stuff happen before the run or after the run, and even after the run, nobody's drinking because that shuts them back.
They're training. Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't been to the ones that they run 30 feet and talk. That seems kind of dumb, but as somebody that's training for marathons. But I guess everybody has floats.
Honestly, the social ones should just be called jog clubs.
Yeah, they should just be called. No, they should just be called excuses to meet people clubs. Anyways, but it was very interesting that she pushed on us. Everybody else on the table is dudes because it's a mostly male company. Why do guys only they never talk about sensitive things? It reminds me of that one story you had the overshare. I don't want to repeat it too. But
overshare?
Yeah, I think one of your buddies was giving you too much explicit.
Oh, yo. Okay.
So anyway, she was going off.
That's off the pod. We never
need to but anyway, so what's funny is that it pertains to this topic of men and women, right? So she's asking us, how come guys just don't talk about those kind of things? I talk about with my girlfriends all the time.
About which kind of things, emotional or what?
No, explicit, I wish he had done this instead of that, and he did this, basically very graphic. And you would have laughed at this. Every guy was like, no, we'll talk about anything else. We'll talk about sports. We'll bond over the meaning of life. I am not gonna want to hear about how he had a
why
unleashed the batter.
You know why? It's because you don't want to picture them in that situation or imagine that.
Exactly.
I think that's what it is.
And every dude was going that. She was just like, wow, you guys are really having a strong reaction to this. I'm like, dude, this is not what I want to be talking about at 3 a.m. dude. It's nah, this not.
Yeah, I mean, in general, it's just certain topics that I don't know. I just don't really it's details we don't really need to know.
Exactly.
And by the way, how is talking about that gonna help? If you said you had a bad experience you talk about it with your boys, how is that gonna solve anything?
Hey, I don't know.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly, dude. And then the other guy sitting next to he said it best. He's just nah, the most detail we get is I hit that. That's so true. I started laughing that's so true, dude.
Yeah, well, I mean, you'll say something or some dude will, but it's always vague.
Vague, exactly. Vague. It's vague, dude.
Yeah.
And then she gave her perspective. Which
it's more like have a little bit of vergüenza there, dude.
I don't know, dude.
Anyway, what was her perspective though?
Well, that. They talk about those things because they want to know all the details and
why?
I don't know.
I don't understand why.
It goes back to the different brain thing. So when they had the scene where they're like you said, you're talking about the index cards and like is this guy single or married? It just reminded me of that. Like that's probably we got the PC version, but apparently it's way more graphic than that.
My favorite. Oh yeah, I'm sure it is. My favorite though is when him and his friend, who was the writer, are walking, and they're like, he's trying to set her up with Sally, right? Or set him up with Sally, and he's like, "I'm a little nervous. You said, is she pretty? Yeah, and she has a curved personality. Yeah, that means she's not pretty." And I was dying with his lunch.
That was good, dude.
He's like, anytime a dude says she's got a good personality, she's not pretty. I was like, wow, that's the most like guy logic I've ever heard.
That is a very guy logic, dude. It's still true to this day, right? Like I think it was Adam Peach just said, like, no dude opens with like, yeah, her great personality. Like there has to be like an additional detail.
What did he say? You can't see her personality is like how he phrased it. I was dying.
It's like, yeah, that's so true, dude.
Oh shoot, that was so funny.
That was a good one. But yeah, that scene's interesting too, because right, you see that like they're trying to help each other out as friends, but the chemistry between their friends, right, is actually better than the person they were trying to set up with each other. And I think sometimes people are
that was such a funny scene though, when like the people they were trying to set up with each other, they ended up getting together in the taxi. I love the taxi scene. Oh, I'm gonna get a taxi. Can I come with you? Yeah. And then they like book it.
Yeah, I'm out of here, dude. No, but it speaks to also like how people can be like kind of like totally like blind to like like the chemistry or the circumstance sometimes. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and also I think you get complacent. I think that was another big thing. And not wanting to take a risk.
Yeah, but that's a lot of people in life.
Well, yeah, but I think that's the point, right? The point is to try to like, I think throughout the movies to try to play out kind of realistic scenarios that a lot of people go through.
Yeah. What about that? My favorite scene, the Cat's Deli,
the restaurant. Go ahead. What did you want to say?
So what'd you think of when Harry thinks he has nobody's complaint, and then she gives him the fake orgasm?
But I think that's a lot of dudes' perspectives, that they don't have any shortcomings.
Of course, dude.
Yeah. I mean, what do you want me to say?
I thought the scene was funny at the end when the old lady across.
Yeah, I'll have what she's having. That's what broke it. Like I was dying.
It's like she wants that.
I could see how probably in the 80s or before that would have been a controversial scene in many ways.
Yeah, now it's like nothing. But like
dude, that would have been it's G in today's movies.
Exactly. This whole movie was G. I don't know how it was controversial, dude.
It's all based on the times, dude.
Yeah, Cat's Deli is still something that exists today too, which is cool. I haven't been myself yet, but it's always too packed. But it's definitely that's a New York
mean, remember that movie that we said whatever happened to Sister Jane or Baby Jane? Whatever happened to Baby Jane?
Yes.
You know that in
you told
1961 England that was rated like X, and I was like, what? Because it implies like a couple murders and things like that. I was like, that's crazy how far standards have gone.
Yeah, I know. That is yeah. It's true. Anyway. I mean, we don't go into that bag often. That's a good point, because like I think any old movie we've done, I mean, I've either found it like because maybe it's a serious topic, so it's really good, but like the style and like how they do scenes is like you said, it's like completely like G compared to today's standards. Like I think even like. I think probably I haven't picked one because I don't know any, but I bet we picked like some 50s movie about whatever, an affair, just having a kissing scene with the other dude was probably considered out of good norms of society.
Too far. I mean, there's even like, and I didn't like the movie. I thought it was a bit or the book, it was overrated, but Catcher in the Rye for late 50s drew such criticism. I think it got banned.
It did. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I love that book. But
it was fine.
I just love how cynical he was.
You probably loved it at the time too, specifically that we read it. But anyway,
probably. But yeah, probably. I haven't reread it since high school, so
yeah, exactly.
But I love that book. I was that cynical boy too.
I know.
Yeah, I love.
But I think that's the point. Like This is interesting because it shows the progressive, like the general trend of a lot of people. You tend to be like a little more cynical or think you know it all, and then you tend to like mature later on. And I think that's kind of what Harry's character showed, and that's kind of like even what Abba has thought, especially when he talks to some younger dudes like Sneeko. Remember the interview? He's like, "Did you think that way?" He's like, "Give it 7 years. Your perspective's going to change because life's going to happen." And it's like, yeah, that's basically what happened to Harry.
Yeah, I think like that
Because even like, there's multiple ways where they show growth. They're even like, oh yeah, like I remember you saying this like with the Casablanca. She's like, I never said that, showing that it's a transition of like they've changed as a person.
Exactly. She remembers those interactions that he.
Yeah, of course. Or the same thing with like with Harry at the airport. Yeah, I remember what you said. Men and women couldn't be friends. There's an amendment I need to make to that.
Yeah.
I never said that. Yeah.
Amendment. Yeah, and there's an amendment. If they're both in relationships, because at first he started with like they're not attracted to each other. He's like, that wouldn't work. Like if they're both in relationships, yeah.
That's pretty funny.
No, the movie was actually like more funnier. It actually I felt leaned more on the funny than it did on the romance at times.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which
it
was
had
like,
a lot of comedic breaks in the movie.
And that's why I think kept the pace kind of flowing a little bit too. I actually think the flow of this movie was actually pretty good. I felt like it was always moving along at the rate it needed to for like these kind of movies, because these kind of movies are kind of like, I think they're too short. They're like it feels like too rushed, and if they're too long, you're like, dude, like this is not like Shakespeare. Like let's relax.
Right.
The one thing I'll mention is the cinematography. I still find that this movie, whoever did like a lot of the shot making, did a good job, because I still view this movie as like, if you want to see what New York is like in the fall, it's like this is like the perfect like movie to show you that. Like if you're like a foreigner and you don't have enough of a sense. Like I always tell people that fall and spring are probably the best seasons in this area, this area, because like
that makes sense.
Summers are nice to go out, but it's humid, and then winters it's tough to go out. Like right now, I have the temperature dropped again, and outside is like 12 degrees.
It plummeted here too. It was 74 yesterday. It's like 30 today.
Rough.
Yeah, like. Anyway, I'll tell you something else later. But
so basically, going through this film, right? So they reunite at the airport.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, he has a different perspective. He's gotten married. He thinks it's the love of his life. We get another time skip, and let's just say
then they're divorcing.
Yeah, and she's getting with his ex-wife.
The tax accountant.
Yeah, the tax accountant,
who's like 30 years older than her when you meet him.
Yeah, and she needs that maturity.
Financial maturity.
Or maybe worldly. But what I like is that maybe I did relate to the guy stuff. It would be interesting to get a female perspective on the film. But like when they're talking about his dilemmas at the sports game, I'm like, that's exactly what I did.
Which dilemmas?
Like they're at the Giants game and they're talking about like his divorce, his separation.
Oh yeah, I was dying when he kept doing the wave.
Yeah, that was
he's so depressed. The wave.
Yeah, and I was just like, oh my goodness, this is what guys still to this day do at the pub or like at the sport event, like catch up, chit chat, But I thought that was kind of funny too. I thought it was like,
I did love it in the scene with the movers. When did she book you? And like he kept going with that a week ago. You've known for a week. And I was like, oof.
That's rough.
Brutal.
Those are rough. Yeah. I guess on the Sally front, her dilemma was like she thought she was in a great relationship, but it was never progressing to the next step. And then when she wanted to progress to the next step,
I think it's just complacency and not being clear in really what you like. She was lying to herself, really.
Yeah. And then that devoured, and then she needed a break to self-heal.
In fact, I know someone who's like that, who's like borderline lying to herself.
Oof.
And that's currently about like being okay with where she's at.
We'll hear about it later off the record. But anyways, and then we get the last time skip, which is probably the meat of this, and then we can we don't have to belabor it. So then what ends up happening, right, is Harry and Sally end up kind of like becoming friends. Actually, there's a sequence in the film that I thought was actually pretty good, right? Like and maybe gave like a homage to like maybe your friends or sometimes your best potential, partners, right? They end up having a relationship that's not based on sex and based on just like getting to know each other, mutual interest, hanging out, but joking around. I thought the museum scene was pretty funny. When they're like Harry's just like messing around, and then they're just having all these intellectual debates about whatever. It starts with relationships, but it ends up to like random stuff. And then obviously it's like Harry that realizes is first that like maybe he's in love with her.
I think it's they realize it more or less the same time.
That's a typical movie cliche, but yes.
But yes, I think it's more Harry first.
Yeah, but yeah, it's they gotta make it work, right? And I think it's like the underlying message. This is what I found. I'm curious what you thought of the underlying message there. It's like it seemed like, yes, obviously physical nature be part of things, but like if that's the primary thing, it's hard to sustain on that because you have to. And I think that's why they like interplace a lot of those clips with like older couples because like over the years, like you're just gonna look old eventually. Like those things.
Yeah, but I think another message that they were saying is like you can grow to love each other too.
Yeah,
I think that's partly what happened.
And then I was gonna say yes. So then that kind of happens. So actually, what did you think of those scenes where it was just platonic? Actually, did you find it realistic? Did you find it unrealistic? Anything interesting there?
Yeah, I can buy it. Oh, I didn't think this movie went out of the norm to like super fake dynamics, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the strengths of it. And I think one of the failures of other modern rom-coms is that like they go
a little too far. But I mean,
they're more fun to watch and they're like good. And like I'm thinking of the How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, but it's like, it's funny, but then you look a step back and you're like this is like so fictional that like this is just good for like entertainment purposes. I actually think that people can actually watch this movie, especially our Sneeko generation, I'll call them, and maybe have some real takeaways and not just like, yeah, dude,
brain rot,
just pump and dump. Yeah. I need 50 wives. Yeah. I'm like, sometimes I'm just like, this is what
that's my favorite about how people justify. I'm Muslim now because they allow you to have multiple wives. I'm like, that's your takeaway from the religion. Like, this is so silly. Anyway, I digress on that. Oh, what I will say with the other part that I kept dying, and this is like differences between men and women too, is definitely when her friends like, yeah, like I'm just hoping like I saw his that was the line that I loved. I saw his Amex statement. Why were you looking through his stuff? Don't worry, it's just you'd be more interested in what I found. He bought his wife a $120 gown. I don't think he's leaving her for me. And she's like, no, he's not. What are you talking about?
Oh my God, that was funny.
Do you remember that? She kept saying he's never leaving her. Yes, get it in your head. You're not changing him.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, and now it comes back to why the catalyst. The catalyst is that the Harry and Sally's friends are gonna get married, and that kind of like triggers things. Yeah. And then
well, okay, so I mean, like, there's not a ton. Obviously, it's just the progression of like a friendship turning into eventually.
And then they have like they have the accidental sex too. That's okay. Now it's all coming back.
So that's what I was going to ask you about. What were your thoughts on that? Because that was obviously the biggest, I mean, crescendo moment.
Yeah, I mean, if I take a step back, because the thing is that it's like you said, it's surprisingly realistic in the sense that it could happen to people.
Yeah, well, you remember Preach's saying, right? A shoulder to cry on.
Yeah, I know, because you keep repeating to me whenever I deal with girls that are like in their emotional self-healing phase. Okay, bro. Anyways, yeah.
But there's truth to that.
Yeah, but anyways, what's interesting? Like, you're right. But what's interesting about that, you're at a fork in the road, then, right? Because you either gotta like let that person go because there's no way to go back, right? That's what Sally interprets, right? They can't be friends anymore because she views that as like a line that was crossed now, that like you can't just go back. different dudes have different opinions. If you can't go back, we'll just go with the one in the film, which is like he wants to progress it, right? At least.
Well, I'm curious. Do you think you could go back at that point? What's your perspective on
My personal perspective is
that line? Can you go back?
my personal perspective is unless you said at the out front that you're friends with benefits, you cannot go back.
Exactly. I 100% agree with you.
Even though with the friends with benefits, in my experience, I've just seen somebody always ends up catching feelings at some point.
Almost always. Almost
so
always.
it's I don't even think that works, but at least I feel like if you
At
do
least you're
early,
honest with it.
if you catch it early enough, you can go back. But if it's like a lot, like you keep going, it doesn't ever work out.
Yeah, but if you don't establish that, or if someone's friends and then they cross that line, I've seen it so many times where you're not really going back.
Yeah, there's no going back. So, but it's interesting. So I think Sally's trying to go first the route of like this, like that's the two options, right? Either progress it or you withdraw. Sally tries to go down the withdrawal path. Harry wants to progress it. And basically, blah, blah, blah. We end up in the typical cliche.
Hold on. Does she want to regress it?
No, she doesn't. She
Sally
wants to
progress
withdraw.
it.
Yeah.
No, I think
Harry,
Sally wants to progress it. Yeah.
no, Harry, I thought, wanted to amend the relationship.
Well, yeah, that's later. But how was she acting after they did it? Cuddling. She was super pissed when he left. Like rushed
That's
out of
true.
there the next morning.
That
And you
is
could
true.
see like the look on her face changed.
That's true. I guess initially she thought it meant like
I
the
think she was
breakthrough.
embarrassed and like she was like, "Well, what the heck? This dude is rushing out." Like I thought that meant something more.
Yeah.
And that's
I
why
think-
she got so pissed when she's like, oh, no, he's like, what was I supposed to do? You were like in that like sad moment. And she's like, don't you dare say you did that out of pity. Like she was fuming.
yeah, I remember that. Yeah, dude. That's
Yeah, she
true,
was
yeah.
so offended, which understandably.
Yeah, and then they have the argument at the wedding.
Yeah.
But you're right. Now it's clicking back to they have because she was feeling in the dumps and like and then that awkward moment happens, but they're both feeling like awkward and regret. Like they don't know, they're processing, right?
I
So
would
each
say
process
Harry
different.
feels more awkward.
And Sally feels more regret.
Well, I think she feels more regret when she sees how Harry acts.
Yeah, but it all works out for her. He just had a process,
Yeah, but she didn't realize it at the moment.
That's true because he'd always share with her that he tries to do. That was something
Yeah,
he shared.
he's
Like, I
like-
try to
he just
dip.
like
He's like, I
leaves.
just dip. Yeah,
And
bro.
so she's like, "Oh no, am I like just another girl like that?" I think that's where the embarrassment comes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but
Like you gotta add, like he even said he's like, "This is great." He's like, "I can be fully honest with her about how I am."
yeah. But what's interesting is that he was just awkward, like you said. He just didn't know what to do next. So he did he defaulted to like his normal behavior mode. So
Yeah, and there is a bit of that. I like when you try to when you cross that line. It's like, oh shoot! Like you realize you can't really go back.
my opinion is that you should just have the talk right then. You should just get
Oh, yeah, but it's awkward, and some people don't like having that talk right away.
Well, you just gotta have
I agree with you, man. But I'm just saying, like that. I think that's very realistic how they portrayed it, because yeah, that little awkwardness does happen to a lot of people.
Yeah, and then we have always like any good rom-com, the grand gesture. I get annoyed by it because like I always
It wasn't
That's
even
why-
that bad. Like it was a little cliche for sure, but it could have been a lot worse how they portrayed it.
that's why I like 500 Days, the deconstruction of this genre, dude. Anyways,
Yeah, that's a very different kind of rom-com.
but yeah, so he does the grand gesture at a New Year's Eve, cliche, like you said.
But even that and it's not a grand gesture. It was more like a redeeming moment than that, where it's like, okay, they could have gone a lot more cynical.
yeah, but this was not. They never had the vibe. It was going to go cynical.
No. They could have gone a lot more cynical even in 500 Days of Summer. Remember at the end, like he runs into that girl at the end at the office. He's like, you never know who you're going to meet when. Basically, was the whole point.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know if that relationship panned out, but like there's
Yeah.
always like there's one door. It's a cliche, right? The one door closes,
Another one
opens.
opens.
Yeah, so you just never know in life. But yeah, so it's the grand gesture, which is a New Year's Eve, like basically kiss and like scene of like love everything about you, cliche. Probably every girl's dream to hear. And then she has a funny line like, "It's impossible for me to hate you."
Yeah.
He had a good line though, which I thought was actually probably realistic for people who
Like what he said he likes.
no, like who fall for the chemical tricks in their brain. Is that like, when you are in love, like you don't want to really wait. You just, like he says, you want to start the next phase of your life as soon as possible. So
Yeah.
but he didn't realize those are chemical tricks in his brain. But yeah, that's just my opinion. Anyways,
Okay, you Rick.
sorry man, I can't help myself.
Morning.
But yeah, so it kind of ends on that stretch. Obviously, you're left with a happy ending, and it's interesting. The film, I was by coincidence, this was like a couple months ago because I know we kept delaying when we're doing the episode. Billy Crystal was, because I think it was it's been like over 30 years. He was asked to reminisce about the film because it's to his surprise. Billy Crystal says he's surprised till this day that people still come up to him and tell him how much they like that movie and like a lot of his character and the scenes and stuff. So I think it's still to this day has resonated with the American consciousness.
Yeah, it doesn't really surprise me.
And yeah, I just want to kind of like wrap up on that. But yeah, I guess like what's your overall thoughts? Anything that you want to share before we wrap this up, or
Not really. I mean, it's a pretty straightforward movie. It's a rom-com at the end of the day. But I thought it was one of the more better. I see why it was so popular. If that makes sense. Like, because there's rom-coms that are very forgettable. This one was not. It actually had a lot of funny moments, which I think helped the progression of the film quite a bit.
yeah, no, I agree. Sure, I'm trying to get an entry here. All right, let's do the ratings. You want to go over it?
Yeah. So I really enjoyed the acting in the film. I thought the two main actors were even the side actors were funny because they really portrayed certain archetypes of people that I think are in the lives of many.
Oh,
Right, some delusional female
sorry
friends.
to interrupt. Give me your last review, but also because it's the theme of the film, answer the question: Can women and men be friends? But do your review first. But that we'll end on that also, like our opinions on that.
I thought I already said that at the beginning when you asked this.
Oh, okay. Then we covered it. We're good then.
I mean, I can say it again if that's really what you want. I don't. Whatever. I'll say that.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Anyway, I thought the acting was pretty good, or really good. I do agree. The cinematography was good in this movie as well, just in how they portrayed New York in like the late '80s. I would say at times I did feel like the pacing was a bit slow, but that's probably just a product of the times. But as far as rom-coms, it's definitely one of the better ones I've seen. That and 500 Days of Summer are pretty good in my opinion. So I'm giving this movie an 8 out of 10.
This is a decent rating. I'm trying to remember what you gave 500 Days of Summer. Let me look at the list.
Oh, like a 9, I believe.
Yeah, I know you like that Deconstructor one.
I love that.
You're like, oh, finally a rom-com that's not like, oh, it doesn't
Cliche out the wazoo.
It doesn't just work out because like that's a grand gesture.
Which is how they always are. Oh, so for the final question,
yeah,
I would say for the average dude, no. But in certain contexts, yes, if that makes sense. There's always a stipulation because you can never say 100%. But overall, for the majority of dudes, no.
Interesting. Yeah, it's it. So you did give your opinion, but it wasn't that succinct. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I guess. So for
Does that make sense? I mean, anyone who says like 100%, I'm like, you're silly. There's obviously certain context, certain like even as dudes, we're all like slightly different. But the average dude, probably not. No.
Okay, so let me give you a hypothetical.
And that's the other thing. It's like I think you can be friends, but you got to establish boundaries. But as soon as something flirts or a boundary gets crossed, that's all out the door. If that makes sense.
No, I see your point. I was going to ask you this hypothetical. Like, let's say like there was a girl that you were interested in, and you still are, and then she's with your friends. You have the same kind of maybe some overlap with the friend group, and then she's obviously with the dude. Do you step back? Do you just bury it? Like, how would you play that?
Yeah, I guess it kind of I don't know, as you get older, right? We've gotten older. Like how you view things in your 20s is not necessarily how you view things as you get older, like in your 30s, right?
Yeah.
But someone I'm interested, like it's beyond just like attractiveness. Like at least for me at this point, I think this happens with a lot of dudes. It's like you got to look at things like, well, what do you want in someone like potentially being part of your future, if that makes sense. If you're just like not caring as much, like you're in your early 20s, you're probably not going to care as much, and you're going to go for it or not. I guess what I'm saying is like what you're trying to look for is like more than just the physical at that point. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yep.
Whereas like if you're talking to someone who's like 22, right, or like Sneako's age, their view is totally different. It's like you're probably not going to want to be friends because you're gonna want to try to get with whoever you want, just not necessarily on personality or matching, just whoever you want to go for.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So your take is most people can't do it, which I think is fair, and the few that can is just because they have extra discipline or something.
Yeah, and I also think it also varies with age too.
Yeah, some guys never grow up. You know that though.
Oh, I agree. That's just my perspective.
Yeah,
I would say,
I'll get-
especially average, like early 20s, probably not.
Yeah, so I agree with the most part. But anyways, I'll answer that at the end of my review. So, anyways,
Yeah,
I
go
was
ahead.
going to say that like I gave it a 7.5. Like I think it was a solid rom-com. It's probably one of the better ones that I go to if people want a recommendation from me because it's pretty funny. I think the comedy's underrated. Actually, I like the comedy.
It
more
had
than
a
the
lot
romance.
of funny moments. I think why I gave it so high, it had a lot of funny moments, and it's like archetypes of people that we've all kind of know or met, or like reasoning and rationale that both males and females go through. Like the delusional woman who like thinks they can change a dude. It's like, oh my god, I've seen that so many, and how they did it was just so funny. The two that are kind of set in their ways or don't want to admit how they really feel. Yeah, it's just hilarious in many ways.
No, it is, yes. And like cinematography was good. I thought, like you said, the other actors were good. I think it was like the fact that it had like a small, good, tight cast was a strength. It didn't
Mhm.
go into like an elaborate, like we didn't have to meet like Sally's parents or other family and stuff.
Or
So, like,
brother, yeah.
yeah, so that was like really good. I think it kept it really succinct and tight. Flow was good. I think I'm not the biggest fan of the grand gesture stuff, so docked it for
Yeah.
that. To answer the question, because it's just to play on the movie's themes, I would say like
That's one thing.
yeah, it's one theme, but the one it kept repeating, asking the audience actually. I did like that touch with the last scene where like they interviewed basically the fictional Harry and Sally characters to give their what happened after the movie a little bit. That was cool. They had the wedding and blah blah. I would say like it's very nuanced, but if I had to give like a succinct answer, I would actually say it's yes, but
With caveats.
it's yes in the sense that like if it's more than just like I'm only talking to them because I'm really attracted to them. So like if you're
Oh yeah, agreed.
yeah, if you're not attracted to them, that's easy. But even if you kind of are, but like you
Yeah.
actually like the personality and you actually like wish them well. I have this like new adage, maybe it's just maturity in my 30s that like I tell this to I don't
Yeah,
tell
but how was your view in your 20s? And I guess that's my point.
my view of my 20s.
Because this is exactly what I was saying.
My view of my 20s was the same thing. Because
No, it was that's an absolute lie.
I had a female friends in my 20s.
Uh-huh. Right?
And the first rule always applied. I wasn't attracted to them.
Yeah, fair. I'm saying if you are.
But there's some dudes that if you are, then I think it's about what came first. Your friendship or the attractiveness, or were you attracted first and you try to be friends?
But that's
to
my
get in there.
point. And that was what I was saying. I think you can be friends, but you have to establish that dynamic. And if anything gets blurred or mixed,
It blows it up, exactly.
yes.
Yeah. And so it's kind of firm boundaries. But the
Yeah.
thing is that
Yeah.
overall,
firm boundaries are crucial.
yeah. But I actually think that overall, there's also a reason why most dudes have more male friends than female friends, because this Venn diagram of like, like you said, the nuance it's like very situational, and like
Yeah.
Yeah, and like it's gonna on probabilities. I'm just not gonna have.
Whereas, like when you're with your home, and that's the thing I think a lot of women can understand is like when you're with your homies, dudes just act dumb and just talk about the dumb things.
Exactly. And also like because a lot of women aren't going to fall in this niche criteria, there's no way I could have like, 50-50 both groups of friends. Like it's not going to work out that
Generally,
way.
no.
Because the odds are I'm going to
You have
find
a couple female
anyone-
friends and generally and a lot of dude friends.
Yeah, exactly. Because the odds are I'm going to find way more of these female friends attractive, and that's going to be a problem. That's the reality. I mean, that's why. I mean, let's just be real, dude. That's why you don't have like 90% female friends, dude. I mean,
No, that's even what I like. I think Abba's the one who talked about this in one video. He's like, you often hear about like some girls who are like, yeah, I don't have female friends because they're like, I just don't like females or they're toxic. And he's like, you never hear that from the other. And he's like, you never hear a dude be like, I don't have any male friends, only female, because like I can't stand dudes. He's like, if anyone ever said that as a dude, I find that sus. I was like, that's not wrong.
the only people I actually know in my personal life that have the inverse ratio are
Females. Oh yeah. That's totally.
exactly.
I meant for straight dudes.
Oh yeah, no, I don't know 100%. Unless they're like a lonely person that they can't make friends, but they don't have like 5 female friends,
No, generally not. But I guess that's my point. But you hear about that of some girls that, like, I can't stand females because they're like toxic or catty. Like I've heard some females say that, and I know some chicks who are like all around like dude groups, but I've never really seen the inverse.
Yeah,
That we're not gay dudes.
And the one thing to add to the caveat, it's a different type of friendship because I've never talked about certain things with my female friends that I have done with my male friends. And it's because like, and that's something that gets like also kind of like,
but I mean, you could say vice versa. There's probably some things you could talk about your female friends where you generally wouldn't talk with your dude friends.
Exactly.
Like sometimes you might want a female perspective over certain things.
Yeah, sometimes.
You can. It's possible.
It's possible, yeah. But after listening to hours of female podcasts, I think that's a very small niche of topics. Anyways, yes, so yeah, that kind of wraps up this episode. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I think actually, maybe in the comments you can tell us if you agree with our last opinions on that, because I do think there's a lot of opinions on this topic still. So
always.
I know.
I think it's a question that will persist to the end of time.
Yeah, probably. No, we'll add the robots soon. Don't worry.
Oh, that's a whole nother can of worms.
But yeah, thanks for listening. We hope you like this episode. Please like and subscribe. That actually helps us more than any comments, actually. And yeah, we'll see you in the next episode where we're doing, I think, New Jack City, right?
New Jack City.
I'm excited for that one. And yeah, that's it pretty much.